Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This is going to be another of my weekly shows on your questions answered. So, for those people that are unfamiliar with this show, basically the idea is this. Each week, I ask for your questions, and I'll give you a shout out in this video for your questions. I'm trying to answer everybody's questions. So if I get a huge long list, I will try to answer them all. If I get only one question, I'll answer it. So in this case, there was like 5 questions from the last week's video. And there's some really good questions in here. So I'm going to answer these questions. Hopefully you'll find this video interesting. I recommend that if you have a small channel or if you want to promote your channel, to ask me a question. I will give you a little bit of a shout out. So just a bit of advice. Okay, but here's the questions for this week. Mr. Gerda asked, again, thanks for answering my question. My third query, do you have any other collections or hobbies beside comics? Okay, so behind me, you can see sort of like a shelf. Underneath that shelf is like a bunch of drawers, okay? And I will show you some of the things that I collect. This is not a really great example, but I collect coins. These are just some random ones. But I collect like Chinese coins. I collect a whole bunch of coins. My biggest collection up till maybe about 5-6 years ago was coins. I was much more into coins than into comics. I collected both, but my coin collection was worth way more than my comic collection. So, I collect like individual sets as well. Like I have all the sets, mainly Canadian coins, to tell you the truth. So like these are like kind of the coin sets that you get. So this is like, all like uncirculated coins. The funny thing is, actually, when I was very young, I started coin collecting, and I became an expert like on coins at the age of 7. And I was so good at knowing everything about grading, everything about all the different coins values, that one time my parents had taken me to Ottawa to see the Royal Mint, where all the coins are made for Canada. And I saw that they had this kind of flimsy display with really rare coins. Okay, so what happened was I was like, hey, that coin's that's $60,000 coin. That's a $20,000 coin. That's I was like sort of listing all the prices of all these kind of coins that you could literally just easily grab and take and walk away. Nobody would have known. They were just poorly displayed in terms of the level of protection that they received. Now, the funny thing was, a year later, I went back to the mint, and they changed the whole setup. Maybe because of what I had said, because the security guard actually was listening to me, and there was a few people that kind of heard what I was saying, and afterwards they changed their whole setup. A year later, they had like these proper glass cases with security measures involved, like some kind of sensors, cameras. He's like really well protected. So I'm not sure if it was truly me that had that influence, but it was kind of a cool thing to see that change at the mint. So I also collect stamps. I never really got into stamps as much as coins or comics, but I did collect stamps, and I have like a pretty good collection of Canadian stamps. I collect mainly Canadian coins and stamps. I do collect some rare British coins as well, and American coins. I have like almost a complete collection of pennies. I actually had a penny that's considered the most valuable coin in US currency. Like, of all the coins, it's the most valuable. And it was a 1943 penny. Now, the 1943 US penny, for those people that don't know, is a wheaty penny. It's like it's got the wheat. And that penny actually is like, normally it's like a silver looking coin. It's made out of aluminum kind of style. And the reason they did that, they ran out of copper. But they, strangely enough, they did produce some that were copper. And those ones are incredibly rare. I just happened to find one and had it, but it was stolen from me. It was stolen, and I never got it back. It was taken as a child. I lost it. I didn't have those security things that I told other people to do, and somebody stole it from me. It turned out later, I didn't realize how valuable that coin was until later. That I found out it was one of 4 known to be in existence. So it's considered one of the most valuable US coins. Sadly, not in my collection anymore. So that's my story about coin collecting. But I also collect British coins. I collect all the different kings and queens of England. So I have like a Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth II as well. You know, all the Edwards, all the Georges, you know, all the different coins, all the Williams, you know, all the different coins for each of the kings and queens of England. So that's something cool that I thought was cool. I love history, so I love that, like royalty history. So I get really into that. So those are some of the things I collect. I collect other things as well, which is kind of weird, but I do collect a bunch of odd things like Snoopies and stuff like that as well. So those are some of the fun things that I collect. The next thing is Rocket Fighter number 8 wrote, if you could choose one comic book publisher, editor, artist, etc., living or not, to have dinner with, who would you pick so you could pick their mind? Who would it be, and what questions would you ask? Okay, so I'm a big fan of Warren Publishing. And I would probably, there's 2 guys that are kind of the key players in that publisher. There's Forrest J. Ackerman and there's James Warren. Now I've heard James Warren's kind of a weird guy, but I would have loved to have met Forrest J. Ackerman, because Forrest J. Ackerman is a true geek. He is the guy that coined the keyword sci-fi. He was the guy that was the first one to dress up and go to Comic Cons and or conventions and just dress up as his characters from the different science fiction movies. He was the one that collected all the original photos and stock photos from the movies. He had this amazing collection, and I would just pick his brain about the different things that he has in his collection, about the different people that he met. He's met Bela Lugosi and all these horror people from the Forgotten Age almost, like Lon Chaney and Ray Harryhausen and all these awesome guys from a Forgotten Age. And it'd just be really great to meet him. I would have loved to. He had a home where he stored all his wonderful collection. It was called the Forrest Ackerman Mansion, Acker Mansion or something like that. And he just stored all these great collections. He had original masks, original props from all these old science fiction movies and horror movies. He had an original poster from King Kong, just amazing stuff from the sort of the black and white movies of the early movies. Just a really great man. So I would love to have met him and to have met him at his home and maybe gotten a tour of his home. The funny thing is I actually met him through email, and I mentioned that in a previous video that I corresponded a little bit with him via email, where I got his he sent me his autograph and stuff like that, but I didn't have that face-to-face meeting, which I wish I had. Okay, so next is Comic Book Ninja. Atomic Age Wonder Womans are the hardest. And that was something that I was responding in the previous video, where I was talking about how difficult it was to get these Atomic Age Wonder Womans. I was just wondering if you're having any problems finding them today. New question. What are your thoughts on the Silver Age and Gold Key characters like Dr. Solar, Magnus, Turok, etc.? Are these characters still being published today? These characters are still being published today by Dynamite Comics and I recently noticed how low their CGC census pop are. All under 200, all in grades for all grades for their first appearances. Do you collect any of these characters or any from Valiant appearances for that matter? Okay, so wow, long question, but I will do my best to answer it. Actually, I was looking for Torak's first appearance, which is not Gold Key, I believe. It's actually Dell. And it's from the 4 color. I believe it's 4th color, like 800 something, 860 or something like that. I was looking for that. I bid on Dr. Solar. I tried to win Dr. Solar, and somebody at the last second outbid me. I was like, oh man. Okay, so yes, I do try to collect those ones. I don't know them as well as other characters, but I do kind of appreciate them. You know, it's like Torak is one of those ones that is almost like a joke character because of the fact that Torak #1 that was a 90s comic was just so overprinted that there's just millions of copies of it. And it's just one of those cheap comics that people joke about. But I do like them. I think they're kind of interesting. So I do find these characters interesting. I'm more interested in some of the other stuff that Dynamite is doing, like the Vampirellas, and they're bringing back a lot of these Golden Age characters that I really like Miss Mask and all these kind of ones. So I'm more into that. And also they're bringing back a lot of my Jungle Girls. I love the Jungle Girls. So they're bringing back those too. So I really like that part. More so than maybe the Dr. Solar or Turok. So, but yeah, I do collect some of those characters. In Valiant, I didn't really get into Valiant. I do have a few in my collection. I didn't really like their style. Like, I don't know. I didn't like it as much. I was more into Malibu Press, which is another publisher that I collected everything from. And yeah, those comics became absolutely worthless, which is so sad. I was really into those, but they were really great at the time. And then Genius Comics wrote, as a Canadian like me, what website would you use to sell your comics? Auction or buy it now? Thanks. So if I was going to sell my comics, it's a bit of a trick. When buying comics, I like to use the service called Stackery because it allows me to ship fairly affordably to Canada. But when actually selling my comics, that's a bit of a challenge as a Canadian. Because you do have that issue where sending to the United States does have high shipping costs. So generally what you do as a Canadian seller is you can use like Comic Link or Comic Connect or Heritage Auctions. And if you have more prestigious books, what you do is you would send all of them at once or in a bigger package to them, and they would auction off your items. Now you got to realize that they take a pretty hefty fee for auctioning off your items, but those ones are pretty good at selling them. Another service that you can look into, I don't think it is as good in terms of the price that you'll get back, is My Comic Shop. My Comic Shop, you can send them stuff as commissions, and they will sell it for you. They're good. I mean, they do sell stuff, but I don't find that they get the higher prices that maybe some of these other auction sites get. It really depends on the level of your books. The reason I recommend these services, especially My Comic Shop, is what you can do is send a bunch of books. And that kind of reduces the shipping costs for the individual books, because if you're selling cheaper books, it's really hard to, sell like a $10 book even across border, because the person's going to be paying $15, $20 in shipping, and they're not going to want to do that on such a cheap item. But if you send over like a whole bunch of items, and then you can reduce that cost per item, if that makes sense. The other thing is if you're using it like a service like eBay, what I'd recommend, if you're going to do cheaper books, do them as lots. There's a real trick to it where you can basically kind of make it. This is a bit of a scam. Sorry to say this, but this is a bit of a scam. But I've seen this done a lot, where they'll have one good book, one like really awesome book, and then they'll have like a bunch of dollar books, and they'll mix them together, and they'll put the expensive book on the front of the images, and they'll show all the images of the other books, but people are really buying that one big book, and then they think, oh, okay, it's a pretty good deal because I get all these other books too. And that's a way of giving people a belief that the shipping costs aren't so bad because they're getting a bunch of books rather than just one book. And that can really work. So what you can do is, as I said, group your book that you're really trying to sell with a whole bunch of lesser books. You can, or even a run of books that might be good. Try to give value, of course, but, there's ways of making it where it's not just one book that you're selling, it's a group of books, and that way people feel a little bit better about paying the hefty fee of shipping from Canada to the United States. There's a lot of other people from Canada that also buy too, so you can still use eBay in that way. So that's my advice about selling comics. I don't personally sell that much. I did sell way back when, but I don't anymore. I love my comics, and I basically cling to them. So I'm not necessarily the best person to ask for advice. I just notice patterns in the way that other people sell their comics. Okay, so next and last question is from John Gabriel. And John Gabriel asks about the Overstreet Price Guide. The Overstreet Price Guide first appeared in November of 1970. Do you think that the modern day comic fan finds any relevance or usefulness in this publication? So the problem with the Overstreet Guide, and I like the Overstreet Guide, to tell you the truth, the problem is it's not really relevant to the modern collector, because of the fact that it just the prices are so out of date. Instantly when you publish a book, the prices are out of date because it takes like a few months to collaborate and produce all that pricing. And then you publish it, and there's sales data that has happened over that time period, like through eBay or through auction sites or whatever. And that data is no longer inside of the guide, right? It's like some things are happening that change the value of the books. And especially within the last 2 to 3 years, there's been a real spike in volume of sales and in the values of comics. And when you have that kind of rapid change in pricing, these guides, these paper guides, become less relevant. However, there is a caveat to this, okay? Why I actually still love the guides is there are books that don't have those rapid changes. They don't have the rapid sales volume. And those are the golden age or the silver age books where there's just not that many sales because there's just not that many books. So the guide can be really useful, especially with more obscure books, where you can find out how much they're worth and get sort of that approximate value. If you buy from heritage auctions, often they'll use the Overstreet Guide as a benchmark for how much the comic is worth or how much a collection of comics is worth. And I find that very useful as a buyer to really know, oh, am I bidding the right amount? Often you'll see even at heritage the bids will go way above the Overstreet value. But sometimes you can get a good deal where they go below. And it's really a matter of watching the auctions and really understanding how much is the fair value for these comics. Like any tool, you have to sort of use like many tools in your playbook in order to really get an accurate sense of how much something is worth. Like you could go to Key Collector Comics and they give you values like low, high, medium, like as if that tells you anything. It doesn't even tell you really what those books sold for and what grade. But it gives you an approximate sense of how much maybe people have paid for comics, but it doesn't really tell you what that comic is worth. You can go to Go Collect, and a lot of the time, if you're looking at Golden Age books, they don't even have a price. They have no fair market value for them. And so you're like, oh, okay, what is it worth? And so really, you got to use all these different tools and the guide to basically kind of form a consensus of how much it's worth. And one of the great things about the guide is it kind of gives you that benchmark. So even though the prices have spiked and gone a little crazy, you can say, well, this is how much it should be worth if it wasn't for the crazy prices that we're experiencing. And that has value in itself, because you can say, okay, well, this book, all of a sudden you see it and it just spikes. It just goes up for whatever reason. And it's 3 or 4 times what Overstreet states. And you can say, well, is it a book that really merits that 3 to 4 times value? And it could be the case that it is overvalued. And the Overstreet guide is sort of saying, maybe you should kind of reconsider spending that much money on the book, because it might go back to what it was traditionally worth. And you see this a lot with like WandaVision Effect and Loki, all these Disney Plus series, where you see the books spiking and they seem really, really hot. Then the show disappears for a few months, and those books gradually come back closer to what the Overstreet Price guide had originally said that they were worth. So I think there's real value in that you have that benchmark. And it might not be 100% accurate benchmark, but it is a benchmark to at least give you some sense of where those comics should be. I always recommend buying the guide and just having it for that purpose. So I hope that answers everyone's questions and gives you a sense of what to experience in these Q&A kind of videos. And I hope that more people ask me questions and pick my brain. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check me out on Instagram as well. Link is in the description. And please leave your questions in the comments below so I can answer them next week. Next Wednesday, I will answer your questions. So thanks again. Bye for now.